We learned yesterday about Keter, which is the aspect of God's desire to give goodness to creation. Keter created the desire to receive and gave it all the light. So we find, therefore, that in the sphere of Chochmah, we have all the light and all the vessel. 100% light and 100% vessel. Afterwards we learned that the vessel of Chochmah in the end feels a difference between itself and the Creator, because the upper light is only giving and the created being is receiving, and the vessel wants to equate its characteristic to that which is above, and therefore decides to stop receiving and to be in the state of giving. This is the sphere of Bina. So the vessel of Chochmah is the desire to receive, and its vessel, its light, is the light of Chochmah, or the light of Chaya. And in Bina, the desire is the desire to give, and the light is the light of Chasadim. So we learned the Sefirot of Keter, Chochmah, and Bina. So the Rebbe says he's going to read now from the middle of number 5. And afterwards comes the third aspect, after Bina. The third aspect is called Tiferet, or also called Zeir Anpin. What is the essence of this aspect? Because after the light became small within the created being, to the aspect of the light of Chasadim, without the light of Chochmah, because the vessel of Bina wants only to give and not to receive, and it's known that the light of Chochmah is the main life force of the created being. So therefore, the second aspect in its end is aroused to draw forth from within it a measure of the light of Chochmah to shine within the light of Chasadim. And this arousal draws forth renewed a particular measure of the desire to receive. And this aspect is the aspect called the third aspect, or Tiferet. The light in it is called the light of Chasadim, with an illumination of the light of Chochmah, because its main aspect is the light of Chasadim, with a measure of the light of Chochmah. So what is the Baal HaSulam saying here? He is saying that the light of Chochmah is the essence and life force of the created being. So therefore, the vessel of Bina that deflected all the light of Chochmah and was being sustained by the light of Chasadim, the vessel of Bina begins to yearn at the end after the light of Chochmah. Why? Because the light of Chochmah is the light of awareness of God, and the created being is not able to live without an awareness of God. But if you're going to ask me, but we see a lot of people that are living without awareness of God, the answer is that this is not life. True life that causes satisfaction and pleasure is life of awareness of God. So the vessel of Bina in its end is yearning after the Chochmah. But what? Since the vessel of Bina itself chooses Chasadim, it chose to be in desire to give. It doesn't want to leave this path. So we find that this vessel is between the rock and the hard place, because it needs the light of Chochmah, because it's the life force of the created being. On the other hand, the vessel feels itself still obligated to be in the way of the fixing of creation, which is the desire to give, which is chasadim. So therefore, the vessel makes a kind of compromise. Its main aspect of chasadim is like bina, and a little bit of an illumination of chokhmah. And this is something new. So I will summarize here. The keter is a desire to give goodness to creation. In chokhmah, we have the vessel of the desire to receive, with all the upper light, the maximum measure. In bina, the vessel is desire to give, and has the light of chasadim. And in Zir Anpin, we have a balance between chokhmah and chasadim. Most of it is chasadim, and a little measure of chokhmah. So the Rebbe is going to continue to read. And after this comes the third aspect. And it is because after the light in the created being became small to the light of chasadim without chokhmah in the sphere of bina, and it's known that the light of chokhmah is the main life force of the created being. So therefore, the second aspect in the end is aroused to draw forth within her, a small measure of the light of chokhmah, to shine within the light of chasadim. And this arousal draws forth anew a particular measure of desire to receive, because it's not possible to draw forth the light of chokhmah without the desire to receive pleasure and enjoyment, because this is the vessel for chokhmah. This is a new form of a vessel, which is called the third aspect, or tiferet. The aspect of the light within it is the light of chasadim with an illumination of chokhmah, because the main light is the light of chasadim, and there's a small illumination of chokhmah. Therefore, why is this tiferet not a complete vessel? Why is chokhmah not a complete vessel? We have there all of the desire to receive. The answer is because the desire to receive has never been separated from the light. And we learned that the shining of the light and its going away is what makes the vessel of desire to receive fitting for its purpose. But if the light hasn't yet left, afterwards in bina, it does deflect the light. So maybe bina is the true vessel, but the answer is no. Because the bina is yearning to give, not to receive. And so the desire to give goodness to the creation can't be expressed in bina. So maybe tiferet is the final vessel, but the answer is no. Because in tiferet, there's only aroused a small measure of the desire to receive. Why only a small measure? Because tiferet wants to be in the way of bina, the way of giving. So we'll continue to read. And afterwards comes the fourth aspect. Because also the third aspect of tiferet at its end measure is aroused to yearn after all the light of chokhmah that there was in the first aspect of chokhmah. This is to say that tiferet itself, the third aspect, is making a balance between the chasadim and the chokhmah. Why? Because the desire to receive chokhmah is small. But after tiferet tastes a little bit of the upper light, so the desire to receive begins to become widened and is expanded. And then from the end of this vessel of tiferet is created the malchut, the fourth aspect, coarseness, which is the true vessel. Why? The desire to receive becomes so big that it no longer has the power of resistance and ability to deal with giving like Tiferet did. And therefore this is the true vessel. So we find that this arousal of the desire to receive, this yearning for the Chokhmah that it had back in the first sphere of Chokhmah, because we said that the vessel of Chokhmah is the maximum vessel and maximum light. So what's new here in Malchut? Because now also Malchut has become separated from the light. This also makes a difference between Malchut and Chokhmah. It's become separated from the light. How did it become separated from the light? Because Bina deflected all the light of Chokhmah and stopped to make use of the desire to receive. Because now there's no light of Chokhmah enclosed in the vessel, but there's a yearning for the light of Chokhmah. So now the desire to receive has reached its final measure, and this Malchut, the fourth aspect, is the true vessel. Because after the light has shined and gone away, so now the vessel has become set. But afterwards it can return and receive the light, and we find that the vessel is separate from the light and doesn't become nullified to the light. In Chokhmah, the vessel was born with the light, but here the vessel precedes the light. And therefore this fourth aspect is considered the complete vessel, which is called by the name Malchut. So the third vessel, Tiferet, is called by the name Zer Anpin, which means a small illumination, because it's only drawing a small aspect of the light of Chokhmah. And this fourth aspect is called Malchut. What's the name Malchut? From the language of the control. Malchut is kingdom, so the control of the kingdom. Because this great desire to receive is controlling all of the created beings, from young to old. Every person in the world wants to receive pleasure and enjoyment. So because the desire to receive is controlling on everybody, it's called by the name Malchut. Another reason, from the language of Malchut Shamayim. Malchut Shamayim is taking like the yoke of heaven. So why? Because the Malchut Shamayim is only relates to the created being. And Chokhmah, Bina, and Tiferet are not yet considered the created being, but only intermediate stages between the creator, which is Keter, and the created being, which is Malchut. All the souls come out from the Malchut. There's no souls that have anything to do with Chokhmah, Bina, and Tiferet. Those are stages, like in the pregnancy, that inside the womb, the baby is miniature, and then through 9 months develops and is able to be born. Everything in our reality is born in stages. So therefore, we need to remember well that the 3 first aspects did not yet come out completely from the aspect of the Creator to be considered creation. It's not yet been complete the desire to receive. And therefore the created being is Malchut. And therefore the idea of having Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim, taking the yoke of heaven, is related to Malchut, because who needs to do that? Is the created being, Malchut. So to remember this very well, that the created being is the Malchut only. And all the souls, meaning all of us, are drawn forth from Malchut. And all the wisdom of the Kabbalah is only what Malchut is grasping. All the wisdom of Kabbalah is speaking by what the created being can comprehend. Like we learned this morning, what does it mean to comprehend? It means the complete understanding is called hasaga. When the created being can grasp and understand in a complete way an aspect of godliness, that's called hasaga. Who needs to attain hasagot? The created being. Until the created being, there is no concept of hasaga. So how do we know that there's keter, chokhmah, and bina, these other aspects? Who's telling us? The created being is telling us. After the created being is born, it can comprehend what gave birth to it, what it came out of. And it gives us this information that we're learning here. So explain this a little more. If we, the men and women that are seeing the Rebbe, I'm asking you seriously, do you want to sit down? Of course you want to sit down. Because if you didn't want to be sitting down, you wouldn't be sitting. And you're sitting. So it's simple that you want to be sitting. If you didn't want to be sitting, then you wouldn't be sitting. Now, someone who's standing on a train, there's some trains in Europe that go for 10, 15 hours. Imagine that a person is standing on a train and there's no place to sit down. And they're standing 10 hours. And there's no place for them to sit. So the person wants to sit down. But you also want to be sitting down. So what's the difference between that you want to sit down and the person on the train that wants to sit down? The difference is huge. You're sitting down. And a person doesn't yearn for what they already have. So therefore, we're not even aware that we're sitting down. If I didn't ask you, you wouldn't even pay attention to the fact that you're sitting down. But I asked you, I touched the point, so now you realize that we're sitting down. But if we didn't ask, we wouldn't think about it, that we're sitting down. Why? Because there's a general principle that a person doesn't yearn for what they already have, only for what we don't have. So the same one that's standing on the train for 10 hours, the person knows what it is to sit down, but they're not able to sit down. So that person is yearning for 10 hours to be able to sit down. So when that person sits down, they have a great pleasure from it. Why? Because their vessel is a complete vessel. This is the difference approximately between Chokhmah and Malchut. Chokhmah also wants to receive the light, and also Malchut wants to receive the light. But Chokhmah is born with the light. So the desire to receive of Chokhmah has a small depth to it. On the other hand, we want to be sitting down. We want. But what's the depth of this desire to receive? Nothing. The depth is nothing. Why? Because we don't yearn for what we already have. So it's true that we want to sit down, but this desire doesn't have any depth to it, not even a millimeter of depth. But not so in Malchut, which comes already after the light of Chokhmah is not there anymore. So Malchut, the depth of Malchut, of its desire to receive, reached its maximum measure. Therefore the Malchut is the created being, the only created being. And this is the only vessel. We'll look at drawing number 2. And someone who doesn't have the drawing, so there's a link here on this page. Drawing number 2. On the right side we have the letters of Hashem's name. The tip of the Yod is the Keter. What is Keter? God's desire to give goodness to creation. This is the Keter. Why is God's desire to give goodness called Keter? Because this is what's above everything, like the crown. Keter literally means crown, like the crown on the head of a king. Also, the word Keter is like the Hebrew word kitor, which means to encircling or to complete a purpose. So the same way that God's goodness, God's desires to give goodness to creation, this is the purpose that's encircling us. Because this that God wants to give goodness to us needs to happen, is guaranteed to happen. So either happen in the way of our spiritual work through Torah and mitzvot, or through the way of suffering. But either way, guaranteed to happen. This sphere of Keter, it's the light in this highest sphere, is called the light of Yehudah. So in the drawing there's also other additional elements that are associated with this. The second sphere is the Yud of Hashem's name. Keter was the tip of the Yud. The first sphere is the Yud of Hashem's name, the sphere of Chochmah. This is the desire to receive, being born with the light. So in its attribute, it's the purpose of creation. Because here we have the purpose of all of creation, that the created being will receive the awareness of God. And because the awareness of God becomes revealed through the wisdom of the Torah and through external wisdoms, so therefore the revelation of God, experiencing God, is called the light of Chochmah. Chochmah literally means wisdom. Afterwards, from this vessel of Chochmah is born the vessel of Bina. This is the first Hay of the divine name. This vessel of Bina wants to become similar to the light that's within her. It just wants to stop receiving and wants only to give. Therefore, the light that's within Bina is called the light of Chasadim. This is called the fixing of creation. This that the created being gives and is busying itself in aspects of giving is not the purpose, but it's the fixing of creation. The light in this aspect is called the light of Neshama. In terms of colors, it's the color red. Red, Adom in Hebrew, is similar to the word dimyon, which means to become similar. The vessel wants to become similar to the light and be in a state of giving. But in Chochmah, the light is white. Why is it white? The light of Chochmah? Because there's no arousal from the side of the vessel. The vessel is created by God's desire to give goodness. And there's no movement, no action from the side of the vessel. Therefore, there's no awareness between a difference between the vessel and the light, and that the vessel hasn't yet aroused. So the light is called white, like clear. But in Bina, the vessel already has become aroused. To differentiate between this, that its characteristic is different than that of the Creator, and it's acting now to change this difference in characteristic. So this light is called the light of Neshama. Soul level is called Neshama and connected to the color red. The third aspect of Tiferet is now a integration between the levels of Chochmah and Bina. The Rebbe is saying to write within the chart here, by the purpose of creation to write Chochmah, and by the fixing of creation to write Chasadim. And under the word integration, to write Chasadim with an illumination of Chochmah. This third aspect is the light, is the soul level of Ruach, and is the color green. Green is the central column, the integration of the desire to give and the desire to receive, and it's called green. Afterwards, from this level of Zeranpin, there develops the desire to receive to its maximum level of yearning. This maximum level of desire to receive, having no desire to give. And this is the true vessel. This is the final hay of the divine name. This is called Malchut. The characteristic, this is the created being that receives. In terms of the spiritual worlds, it's the lowest spiritual world, the spiritual world of Asiya. In terms of the light, it's the lowest light, the light of Nefesh. In terms of color, it's the color black, because here the desire to receive is great in its true form. So there's the opposite of form, of characteristic, completely to that of the upper light, the complete opposite characteristic from God. Therefore, it's black. What does it mean, black? There's no awareness of divine light in it. So we learn here the characteristics of the Sefirot, which is called, like the title of the second drawing, progression of the four levels of the divine name. So this is the progression of the four levels of the divine name. Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. This progression of the four Sefirot is like the spinal column of the whole wisdom of the Kabbalah that is written here in number 5. This order of development is called by the Kabbalists the 4 aspects of direct light. 4 aspects of direct light. Anytime we hear this, direct light, it's talking about the appearance of the direct light from the desire to give goodness to creation. This light goes down through Chochmah, Bina, Zeranpin, into Malchut. The divine light goes through this process of progression until in the end of the matter it creates the created being who is receiving.